Happy to be here with you this morning. As Andrea said, first of all, I am not John Travis, so sorry for the disappointment. I gave you a brief outline, so if I mess this up today, go back and read through Psalm 42 and 43, follow this outline. I think you'll find it answers a lot of questions. I leaned heavily on a sermon by Tim Keller. I don't know if y'all are familiar with Tim, but I listen to his messages a lot. He passed away late last year. Really a gifted speaker. And my task this morning is to cover Psalm 42. We're actually going to cover Psalm 42 and 43 because they actually go together. And at some time they were probably together. Somehow it got divided into another chapter. Not sure why. I am not a biblical scholar, and I'm an Aggie, so just bear with me. But before we get started, let me just ask some general questions because I think sometimes it helps me get into a flow. Interestingly enough, Psalm 42 starts with one of the songs that we sang this morning about deer panting for water. So I don't know if that's run through your head before, but I wanted to start by seeing if you could tell me why you think the psalmist would want to use an analogy that's associated with a deer hunting for water. And I've learned if I stand up here quietly long enough, someone will actually talk. So. Yes, sir.
I've got deer all over my backyard, and I'm not supposed to go into my feet when you get attached to it. There's something about deer that's, to me, calming, and the fawns are just terrific. I want to grab it in the buggy. Something about a deer that attracts me. Maybe it attracts me.
Okay. Thanks. Yes, sir.
As a hunter, most of the time they pant after they've been running for a while.
Yeah. The image that I think the psalmist is trying to create here, hopefully this is not too loud. This is not a deer that's just found some water. This is a deer hunting for water, probably struggling for survival. And I think the reason why that word picture is sort of important is because it lends itself to the condition that the writer of this psalm finds himself in. So before we have it read, I'm going to ask Mike to read it here in a little bit. Let me just ask you this. Have you ever sensed that God wasn't available to you? And if so, how did you recover from feeling that way?
Could you say that again?
Have you ever sensed that God wasn't available to you? And if so, how did you recover from feeling that way?
I continue on top.
Excuse me?
I continue on top of my brain.
Okay. So you recovered by just seeking Him, right? Okay. We'll get into, how we sometimes arrive at these feelings of loneliness and despair here in just a minute. But I think what we'll do is we'll start with a reading of Psalm 42 and 43. So Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you.
As a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and behold the face of God? My tears have been my food day and night, while people say to me continually, where is your God? These things I remember as I pour out my soul. How I went with the throng and led them in procession to the house of God. With glad shouts and songs of thanksgiving, a multitude keeping festival. Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my help and my God. My soul is cast down within me, therefore I remember you from the land of Jordan and of Hermon, from Mount Mizar. Deep calls to deep at the thunder of your cataracts. All your waves and your billows have gone over me. By day the Lord commands his steadfast love, and at night his song is with me, a prayer to the God of my life. I say to God, my rock, why have you forgotten me? Why must I walk about mournfully because the enemy oppresses me? As with a deadly wound in my body, my adversaries taunt me, while they say to me continually, where is your God? Why are you cast down, O my soul? And why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my help and my God. Vindicate me, O God, and defend my cause against an ungodly people. From those who are deceitful and unjust, deliver me. For you are the God in whom I take refuge. Why have you cast me off? Why must I walk about mournfully because of the oppression of the enemy? Oh, send out your light and your truth. Let them lead me. Let them bring me to your holy hill and to your dwelling. Then I will go to the altar of God, to God my exceeding joy, and I will praise you with the harp, O God, my God. Why are you cast down, O my soul, and why are you disquieted within me? Hope in God, for I shall again praise him, my help and my God.
Thank you, Mike. So, as you see in this little outline, there's three things that are being communicated in this psalm. One, we have a condition of the psalmist. Two, we have the causes for that condition. And then finally, the cure for the condition. And we'll go through each of those. So with regard to the way the psalmist is feeling, clearly feeling despair, feeling separated from God. And he's almost talking to himself, if you think about it. He asks a series of questions three times. Why are you downcast? He's talking to himself. And each time there's a little bit more hope in his response. But the reality is that I think all of us go through periods of feeling very connected to God. And at times, we go through periods where we feel a little separated from him. And this happens to everybody, even the strongest of examples from the Bible. There's a couple of examples I pointed out here. In each case, whether it's Elijah in 1 Kings 19:4, or Moses in Numbers 11:15, or Jonah in chapter 4, verses 3, they all cry out to God and say, take my life. I haven't done that before, but you have to be in a very difficult place, and circumstances can be such that you feel like there's no hope left. And in those times, these what I would call well-known prophets from the Old Testament reach the end of their rope. And in each case, if you read through those various scenarios, you'll find that God is there. And even though he's asking, even though each of them is asking for them to take his life, there's not that response. He makes his presence felt. And so it's important. We talked a little bit about the deer panting for water. I would say thirst is a metaphor for a deep yearning for God. Another way of saying it is we need God as much as we need water for survival. But at times we reach a point where we're so parched or we're so at a loss, there's a spiritual dryness that can overcome us. And note that in this psalm, there's really no reason given for why he feels the way he feels. There's no tragedy pointed out. There's no suffering that he mentions. It's just an absence. And I think we're all probably familiar with situations where things don't go our way. Things happen to us that we didn't expect to happen in our lives, whether it's at work or in relationships with our family or relationships with our friends. But there are times I think we all go through periods of drought, of not feeling joy, rather feeling sort of like we're alone, even though we may be around other people. So we've kind of laid the foundation for where the psalmist is. He's not feeling great. So what are some of the causes? What we read in here is that there's clearly a change in setting. He longs for things that have been taking place in the past. Processions that he's been a part of, celebrations that he's been a part of. He's clearly away from that. And that's creating longing, I guess I would say. The other thing is that he's away from his friends. And he's surrounded by scoffers, if you will. I think we can get beaten down by what happens in the world on a day in and day out basis. One of the things that I think is becoming more and more evident is the negativity that's associated with just life in general. Whether it's our political situation, whether it's other strife between countries, there's a lot going on around us that can get us down. And it's important that we realize when we are dealing with those times, we have to find a way to overcome those. And relationships becoming really important at that period of time. Whenever we're struggling is when I think it's most important for us to seek God and seek God through our community of faith. I know for me personally, there are times where I will wake up and not feel like going to church. And inevitably, when I get there, it's one of the best experiences I've had. Not necessarily because of anything I've done, but it's the collective community of faith, building each other up, the worship together that brings home to all of us the reality that there is hope for all of us in the world. The other piece, yes, sir.
You were talking about spiritual dryness and all. I think that's very much a part of Psalm 42:10. My foes taunt me. 42:10. My bones suffer moral agony, and my foes taunt me, saying to me all day long, "Where is your God?" There's an outside stress there too.
Sure.
It could be in some cases in our world, in the family. It could be in who we work with. It could be a number of places where we get ridiculed.
Absolutely. I think the challenges that are brought about to day in and day out life. There's things that make us feel alone. We can respond to that by surrounding ourselves with the people that we're a part of a community of faith with. The secular world is always going to scoff at the hope that we have. And the reality is, part of that scoffing, in my opinion, is because they're seeking the same thing. And they're not finding the connection. And sometimes we have, as believers, to be that connection and help them see, the way we are. David mentioned in his sermon today that, we're supposed to live a life that's set apart from the world so that the world sees us as a people of hope, a people who have something to look forward to, and they want to know more. And we should be prepared to share that with them. The other thing is that sometimes this feeling of despair isn't always just psychological. It can be physical as well. So the psalmist refers to in the psalm the fact that all he has to eat are his tears. Okay, so there's a progression that can occur when you are depressed. You retract yourself from others. You stop eating and perhaps drinking water. And there's a strain that's put on you that puts you in a place that is difficult to recover from. So the reality is, when we're surrounded by people who are not aligned with our belief system, and as I say here, you feel like you're in a hostile environment, we can begin to question our faith. And clearly the psalmist is questioning why he's going through what he's going through. And so lastly, around the causes, not eating, loss of sleep, physical pain only contributes to that feeling of despair that he's articulating in this psalm. Yes, ma'am.
I don't know where you would classify this, but about 30 years ago, I suffered from a severe case of clinical depression. And I felt pretty hopeless. Not bad enough to want to take my own life because I'm a coward, but it was bad. And I don't know, that is an emotional, mental condition, but it's also a physical condition. And it's one of the things that helped me was getting professional help. And that's what a lot of Christians are brought up believing, that we don't need to ask for that kind of stuff. We ought to be able to just pray about it, and everything will take care of itself. Well, I don't believe that. I believe that, if my car breaks down, I take it to an auto mechanic, because I certainly don't know anything about that.
Right.
And when you have marital problems, there are marital counselors that can help you. If you're having emotional or physical or mental problems, I think we should seek help. Prayer and everything else is a big part of it, and community is a big part of it, and it was for me. But seeking help was another big part of it, and it was not something that happened overnight. It was months before that.
Oh, I can imagine. I think any of us that have been through periods where things don't seem right for the world, and a lot of this is, I'm going to just say this about myself. As a creation of God, I know I was created in His image, and I was given love and potential, right? What I tend to do when I'm struggling is I focus way too much on what's important to me, rather than reminding myself what I was created to do, which is to be a disciple of Jesus Christ and demonstrate to the world that by putting hope and trust in Him, that's where my life is. And so, I think all of this is very instructive. What I love about the Bible is the Bible doesn't sugarcoat anything. We have example after example after example of people of faith struggling, people of faith dealing with tragedy, and then the reality of the world being made right through God coming here in the person of Jesus Christ. So let's talk a little bit. We're going to go transition. We may finish early, y'all. So when we're dealing with all of these challenges, what are some of the cures that we can engage in? And I've got a couple here. One is pursue God. In absence, when you're feeling there's an absence of His presence, we have to seek His presence. His presence isn't removed from us. We're in a condition where we've decided He's not there. So it's okay to reach out to God and say, God, I don't feel you. God, I'm not sensing your presence. Please help me to be aware of what's going on. For me personally, one of the ways that is a great reminder for me of the glory of God is to get outside, to see the majesty of His creation, to see the power that exists in the world that He created. And I think that helps reorient us. I think probably one of the challenges with the younger generations is they tend to spend more and more time on their screens versus outside and enjoying nature. And I think we can all be guilty of that too. We get so tuned into what we think is most important, whether it's work or some activity or whatever, that we're missing the opportunity to see the blessings that are around us. And those blessings come in many different forms. And then the second thing is, in addition to reaching out to God, what Dr. Keller talks about is we do a lot of listening to ourselves, and as we listen to ourselves, the orientation around everything that we're doing is panic, right? Well, why do I feel this way? I must have done something wrong. Woe is me, all those types of things. And the reorientation around talking to yourself in a positive way and creating a different mindset about how we should be thankful and seek God's presence. In fact, the psalmist says, put your hope in God 3 different times. And he's talking to himself in each one of those cases. He's sharing with himself where his true hope lies. And then the last cure is meditating on the unconditional love of God. And that's made most visible in the person of Jesus Christ. So the psalmist realizes there's a hope for something, and this is prior to Jesus coming to earth to make the path better for us. But he understands, and he's inspired by the hope that God has demonstrated to him in the past. And we have a little bit better picture of the unconditional love of God because we know about God coming to earth in human form and living the life that we should have lived and dying the death that we should have died so that we could have a relationship with him forever. So when I compare the despair of the psalmist, feeling alone, not feeling God's presence, and I picture what Jesus was going through as he went to the cross. The orientation is a little bit different. In the psalmist's case, the psalmist can't see God. In Jesus' case, Jesus knows that he's come to earth to accomplish what his Father sent him to do. That didn't stop him from asking for that cup to pass in the garden. But he chose to follow God's will, and he chose to go to the cross so that we would have the opportunity to be in relationship with God, both now and for eternity. So I had put here that Jesus went to the cross and he faced true despair. You'll recall he cries out to God, my God, why have you forsaken me? That's actually, I think, a psalm, if I'm not mistaken. And if you read through that psalm, there's a very hopeful message at the end of that. He also experienced the absence of God on the cross. And he did that for us. He did that knowing that he would face true absence, true withdrawal of God's presence, so that we would never have to go through that. He also, I think in John, I just mentioned chapter 9, 19:28, he also mentioned he was thirsty. And, I think those two settings of being separated from God and thirsting for God are very powerful images that give us a hope that we wouldn't have had he not come and made that sacrifice on our behalf. So, yes, Linda.
I think it might be part of the cure that you've already mentioned, maybe coming within number 3, meditating on the unconditional love of God. But what we choose as input for ourselves makes a big difference in what we feel. Whether it's our music, what we hear or listen to, and that's a choice, or what we read. And I know that I can get down if I read too much negative or hear too much negative, and I can get up real fast when I do, like you said, go outside and appreciate God's beauty and creation, but also to listen to music that is uplifting, specifically taking me to the Lord.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we all have go-to behaviors that reorient us, or at least I hope we all have those. I think that it's always a blessing to me to find hope in the hope that I see in others, and that's very encouraging to me. Yes, sir.
One of the things that's real practical you could add to the list is going out and doing something to serve someone else.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got a lot of opportunities here. As an example, Loaves and Fishes does 3 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to go on the truck run and you go down and you're giving food to the people that have none, any kind of serving refocuses our mind on someone else and their needs instead of our own problems.
Yeah.
And that can be a great first step to begin to get out of that difficult situation, and we begin to see God working. And if we do that, we're always going to be blessed by serving somebody else anyway, as a natural part of it. But then if we're really struggling with stuff internally and have our minds kind of withdrawn and focused on our own problems, it gets us to refocus outwardly instead. And it helps us to make that transition.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, I think that there's real power in service. There's a lot of, anytime any of us have volunteered, and we always end up probably getting more out of it than we gave. And I think that, doing those types of acts, put us in a posture that God would want us to be in. That's where we are being a light to the world. That is where we are showing, that we love first because of what He did for us. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Something I read just recently or heard recently. Everyone stumbles, but it's a response how we handle it. Mac Lucado said, "Landing in a pig pen stinks, but friends staying there just plain stupid."
Rita, were you going to say something? Okay.
A couple of things. One is David's having us go through the exercise today of the breath prayer. I'm on the prayer team here, and we do breath prayers sometimes, and I find that by the end of doing several breath prayers, I have calmed way down. And so I would encourage you, if you've never done breath prayers, to give it a try, especially in a time where you're anxious and you feel your heart going and you just don't know how to calm down. Just go in a room by yourself, sit down, think of what phrase or what scripture calms you down, and breathe it in and breathe it out 10 times or whatever, and you will see that your body will respond. I also wanted to point out, for the past year, I have really been paying attention when I read in the Word about people that are really depressed and they're wanting to give up. And a whole lot of the times that happens, I have noticed that the first response in the Word is for them to take care of their physical need first. And the 3 scriptures that Greg has on our sheet, I was looking at 1 Kings 19:4, and I wanted to read that. But he went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a juniper tree and asked that he might die, saying, "It is enough. Now, O Lord, take my life, for I am not better than my fathers." Okay, now here's what I want you to hear. As he lay and slept under the juniper tree, behold, an angel touched him and said to him, "Arise and eat."
Yeah.
As a registered nurse who worked in the field of oncology, I often saw people who had just gotten the news that they had cancer go into a depressive state, understandably so. I did it when I was told I had cancer. And for me, my reaction is I don't eat and I don't drink. And as you don't eat and don't drink, you all know that things look worse for you. And they get worse and worse the weaker you get. So you then start not thinking clearly at all. So putting a plug in for our meal ministry here. If you are someone who signs up to take a meal to somebody, it is way more than just giving them food for the day. You don't know how far that food may be going to bring them out of the blues or bring them out of depression. So we have to start by taking care of us physically so that we can accept what God gives us. I also put a plug in for the prayer team. We meet every single Wednesday and we pray over needs. So if you ever find yourself dealing with despair, if you let the prayer team know, we will pray for you by name, and it never leaves our group. But we are there to pray for you.
Thank you. I will mention one of the things that Dr. Keller pointed out in that reference of God sending an angel to Elijah. The angel didn't show up and tell Elijah, well, you're thinking about this the wrong way. He cooked him a meal, which is kind of remarkable, just to think about the hospitality side of, bringing comfort to creation. So, pretty impressive stuff. Okay. I will just wrap up here by asking if there are any other comments before I let y'all go way too early. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Sister gave me a good point. She said you don't have for that food to go. But the angel came to Elijah the second time. The angel came to Elijah the second time. He told him to rise and eat because this food gonna be long for the journey. Yeah, longer it's gonna take it. It's gonna be 40 days or 40 nights, and he gets there to eat again. So it's a long journey for him. So this is the point she made about that. That food I'm not gonna go. So that's good because it goes deeper than what you think it does. So thank God for those that do the service.
Yeah. Thank you.
Sometimes I think that we should pray, to God when we're going through certain things, ask Him what we need to do according to His words, because He is the beginning, the middle, and the end. So He's our answer. Because we go through things because it helps us to grow. Without, I said, the bad things happen, you would not ever appreciate any of the good things that comes your way. So you do have to accept both, the bad and the good. You understand? No?
Yes, sir.
Most of you know Judy Biddick. She's one of the leaders in our food truck distribution. And we were going down the other day, we were just chatting as along, and she said on one occasion, one of the men that was being served came up to her. We gave him a bag of food, it's got different things in it. And she said he was so appreciative. And he said, I haven't eaten in 4 days. And she said, I get upset if I haven't eaten in 4 hours.
Yeah, I think that, the last thing I would say is that, when we find ourselves struggling, and we're in despair and we think that, God isn't listening. I always try to remind myself of, the people in the Bible that set really bad examples for us, but really great examples for us. So, David, who is a man after God's own heart, messed up over and over again, but he never felt that he couldn't pursue God. And I don't think he was ever disappointed about it. And, it's interesting, we're doing this study on 1 Peter. Can you imagine denying Christ and then, becoming one of his, most amazing disciples? I think that we can get caught up in a sense that, God doesn't love us. And I think that's something we should never do. Yes, sir.
I think one passage that really helps and ties into this, the Psalms, is in Philippians 4, verses 4 through 9, or 4 through 8.
Yeah.
And it starts off with some of the things the psalmist says: rejoice in the Lord always. I'll say it again, rejoice. Let your gentleness be evident to all. the Lord is near. And I think that's a reminder to us, He's always there.
Yeah.
It's not us, He didn't leave us, He's always here. But then He says, do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your request to God. I read a piece by Corrie ten Boom several years ago, and she was talking about this passage. Late in her life, when she had a lot of pain and difficulty, couldn't even climb the stairs hardly, and was struggling, and she said, I realized that it says, in every situation, give thanks to God. So I started thanking Him for the pain I felt when I walked up the stairs.
Yeah.
And she said, when I got to the end of the day, I felt way better than I had when I started and when I had on other days. So I started doing it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was kind of, to me, an object lesson of this particular passage. And then it says, the blessing is, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks, everyone. Sorry I didn't fill the whole hour, but I appreciated your participation. Yeah.